I took the job at Rockport Light because I needed to disappear for a while. Bad divorce, worse debts, and a drinking problem that cost me my job at the harbor master's office. The automated lighthouse only needed someone on site for maintenance and weather monitoring, perfect for a guy who wanted nothing more than blessed silence. The station sits on a granite outcrop 3 miles from shore, connected to the mainland by a narrow causeway that floods during high tide. Twice a day, I was completely cut off from the world. Exactly what I needed. The foghorn was my only companion those first weeks. Every 30 seconds during heavy fog, it would bellow across the water, a deep, mournful sound that rattled the windows and my bones. But fog season in November meant I heard it constantly. The sound became part of my breathing, my heartbeat. That's why I noticed when the echo started coming back wrong. At first, I thought it was just the acoustics. Sound travels weird over water, bounces off underwater formations, gets distorted by temperature layers. But this wasn't distortion. This was response. The foghorn would sound its regulation blast. Horn. Then, maybe 10 seconds later, from somewhere out in the gray, horn. But twisted, stretched, like the sound was being filtered through something that didn't quite understand what it was hearing. I started timing it. The echo came from the same direction every time, northeast, where the seafloor dropped into deep water. And it was getting closer. Each day, the response came back faster, stronger. On the 5th day, I realized it wasn't an echo at all. I was up in the lamp room, cleaning the lens, when the horn sounded below me. I watched the beam sweep across the fog bank, and that's when I saw it, just for a second, a disturbance in the water about 200 yards out, something large moving just beneath the surface. Then came the response, but this time I was high enough to see where it originated. Something broke the surface, not fully, just enough to expose what looked like a massive, bulbous growth, flesh-colored, pulsing, and from it came that horrible, stretched version of the horn sound, like a scream being forced through the wrong kind of throat. I dropped my cleaning rag and grabbed the binoculars, but the thing had already submerged. The water was glass smooth again, giving no hint of what I'd seen. That night, I radioed the Coast Guard, told them I might have spotted a whale in distress. They said they'd log it, but couldn't send anyone out until the weather cleared. Visibility was near zero. The horn sounded every 30 seconds through the night, and every time, that thing answered back. I stopped sleeping, started watching from the lamp room with the binoculars, trying to catch another glimpse. The response was definitely getting closer. What started as a faint reply from the distance now came back strong enough to rattle the windows. On the 7th night, I figured out what I was dealing with. The horn sounded at 2:47 a.m. The response came back 12 seconds later, but this time I was ready with a stopwatch and the marine radar. The blip on the screen was massive, at least 40 feet long, moving at the surface. But here's what made my blood turn to ice water. The radar showed it was only 60 yards from the lighthouse. The sound was taking 12 seconds to travel back to me, which meant the thing wasn't just responding to the horn. It was learning to delay its response, mimicking the timing of a real echo. It was studying the pattern, adapting to it. The next morning, the fog lifted just enough for me to see the water around the lighthouse. The sea was churned up in a perfect circle, like something enormous had been swimming in loops around the station all night. And floating on the surface were pieces of things, flesh, bone, pieces of whales, dolphins, fish, all partially dissolved, like they'd been digested and rejected. I tried to radio the mainland, but the equipment was dead, not broken, completely silent, like something had drained all the power from it. The horn sounded its midday blast. This time, the response came from directly below me, from under the lighthouse itself. The sound vibrated up through the rock, through the metal structure, into my bones. That's when I understood. It wasn't mimicking an echo anymore. It had learned to replicate the horn perfectly. But its biology could only produce sound one way, through what we'd call screaming. I packed everything I could carry and started walking the causeway back to shore during low tide. Behind me, the horn continued its regular blast, and from the water around the lighthouse, that hideous scream horn answered back, over and over. The Coast Guard found the lighthouse empty 3 days later. The horn was still working, but all the windows had been shattered from the inside. On the lamproom floor, they found my logbook. The last entry read, "It's not mimicking the horn anymore. It's trying to talk." Perdition Point Lighthouse, Oregon, August 2020. The job posting was too good to be true, which should have been my first warning. 6 months at an automated lighthouse, full pay, minimal duties. The previous keeper had quit for personal reasons, and they needed someone immediately. Perdition Point sits on a rocky island 8 miles offshore, accessible only by helicopter or boat in calm weather. The lighthouse itself was built in 1897 and still used the original Fresnel lens, a massive prismatic beast that threw light 20 miles out to sea. What struck me immediately was how bright the light was. Even in broad daylight, the lamproom glowed with an intense white radiance that made my eyes water. The power consumption should have been enormous, but the generator readings showed normal usage. "Light's been burnin' steady since 1897, said Captain Morrison, the guy who helicoptered me in. "Never gone out once, not even during the big storms. Makes the mariners feel safe, knowin' Perdition's always lit." He dropped my supplies and left in a hurry, claiming weather was moving in, but the sky was clear. The first week was paradise. Isolation, routine, and the most spectacular sunrises I'd ever seen. The lighthouse keeper's quarters were Spartan but comfortable, and the work was minimal, mostly weather reports and equipment checks. But I started feeling tired, exhausted really, even though I was sleeping 10 hours a night. And cold. Even with the August heat, I found myself wearing layers, huddling near the little space heater I'd brought. By the second week, I'd lost 15 pounds. My appetite was gone, my hands were shaking, and I felt this constant chill in my bones. I figured it was just the isolation getting to me, maybe some kind of flu. Then I started noticing things about the light. It never dimmed, not once. During my nightly inspections, I'd check the lamp room, and that Fresnel lens blazed with the same intensity, whether the generator was running or not. In fact, the light seemed brightest when the generator was off. I started timing it. During power outages, which happened frequently due to the old electrical system, the light would actually grow brighter and warmer. I could feel heat radiating from the lamp room even when I was 2 floors below. The really weird part was the lens itself. Most Fresnel lenses are made of glass and metal, but this one looked organic. The surface had a texture like mother of pearl, and sometimes when the light hit it just right, I swear I could see veins running through it, like blood vessels. I tried to research the lighthouse's history, but the internet was spotty, and my calls to the Coast Guard went unanswered. The logbooks in the keeper's quarters only went back 5 years, and they were mostly routine entries. But there were gaps, long stretches where no entries were made, then sudden notes like "new keeper arriving" or "health issues resolved." 3 weeks in, I was barely functional. I'd lost 30 pounds, my hair was falling out, and I could barely make it up the stairs to the lamp room. But I felt compelled to make my nightly inspections. Something was drawing me up there. That's when I saw what was inside the lens. It was during a power outage around midnight. I climbed the spiral stairs to check the light, which was blazing brighter than ever. As I got closer, the heat became almost unbearable. But I pressed on, drawn by something I couldn't name. The Fresnel lens wasn't a lens at all. It was a shell, a chrysalis, and inside, suspended in what looked like luminous fluid, was something vast and alive. Tentacles, maybe, or neural tissue pulsing with that same white light. The veins I'd seen weren't flaws in the glass. They were part of the thing, feeding tubes that ran down into the lighthouse structure itself. I watched, horrified and fascinated, as the creature pulsed. Each pulse sent waves of light out to sea. And with each pulse, I felt a little more drained, a little colder, like something was being drawn out of me. I stumbled backwards and fell down the stairs, blacking out when I hit the landing. When I woke up the next morning, I was lying in my bed with no memory of how I got there. But on my nightstand was a stack of old photographs, yellowed with age. They showed the lighthouse through the decades, with different keepers standing proudly beside it. All the keepers looked the same in the later photos. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, ancient even when they were clearly young men. And in every photo, the light blazed in the background, beautiful and terrible. I found a note tucked behind the photos, written in a shaking hand. It feeds on us, slowly. The light isn't electric, it's bioelectric, our bioelectric. It's been feeding on the keepers for over a century, just taking a little at a time. Just enough to keep the light burning. Just enough to keep ships safe. The previous keepers knew. We all knew. But we stayed anyway. Because someone has to feed it. Someone has to keep the light burning. The ships depend on it. They've always depended on it. I was packed and ready to leave within an hour. But when I went to radio for pickup, I discovered something that stopped me cold. The radio was working fine, but every frequency was filled with distress calls. Ships lost in fog, running aground, colliding in shipping lanes, all along the coast. Perdition Point's light had gone out. I looked up at the lamp room and saw only darkness. The creature inside the lens was still there, but dormant, waiting. And in that silence, I could hear them, the ships calling desperately into the night, looking for the light that had guided them safely for 123 years. I unpacked my bags and climbed the stairs to the lamp room. As I approached, the creature stirred, and the light began to glow again. Warmth flowed out of me and into it, feeding its endless hunger. But the ships stopped calling for help. 3 months later, they found me unconscious in the keeper's quarters, severely malnourished and suffering from hypothermia. The Coast Guard airlifted me to the mainland, where I spent 2 weeks in intensive care. They asked me what happened, but I told them I didn't remember. Equipment failure, I said. Some kind of gas leak that made me sick. They assigned a new keeper the following week. A young guy, eager for the isolation and the good pay. I wanted to warn him, but how do you explain something like that? How do you tell someone there'll be food for something that keeps ships from drowning? The light at Perdition Point burns steady now, just like it has for over a century. Ships pass safely in the night, guided by its brilliant beacon. And somewhere in the keeper's quarters, a young man is probably just starting to feel tired, cold, hungry for something he can't name. Someone has to keep the light burning. The ships depend on it. Flannan Isles Lighthouse, Scotland, December 2020. I'm a marine salvage expert, which means I get called in when ships disappear and people want answers. So when the Scottish Maritime Authority asked me to investigate the Flannan Isles Lighthouse incident, I figured it was routine. Automated lighthouse goes dark, maintenance crew vanishes, probably just equipment failure and an accident. But the Flannan Isles have history. In 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers disappeared without explanation. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just an empty lighthouse with a half-eaten meal on the table. And the final log entry: Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. The modern lighthouse was automated in 1971, but they still sent a maintenance team out quarterly. 2-man crew, 3 days max, check the equipment and head home. Simple. Until Team 7 went missing. I choppered out on a gray December morning with Coast Guard investigator Sarah Chen. The helicopter pilot was nervous about the landing, the weather was turning, and Flannan Isles are notorious for sudden storms. But we had maybe 4 hours of decent visibility. The lighthouse stood exactly as it should, white tower gleaming against dark rock, beacon flashing its regulation pattern. Nothing obviously wrong. But the maintenance boat was still tied up at the small dock, which meant the team hadn't left. Radio contact lost 72 hours ago, Chen briefed me as we approached. Last transmission was routine, weather report, equipment status normal. Then, nothing. We landed on the helicopter pad and immediately felt it. That strange quiet you get in places where something's gone wrong. The wind was howling, but underneath it was a deeper silence, like the island itself was holding its breath. The lighthouse keeper's quarters were locked, which was unusual. Maintenance teams normally left everything open for ventilation. Chen found the key under a loose stone, exactly where it was supposed to be, according to the manual. Inside, everything looked normal. Too normal. Beds made with military precision, equipment sorted and catalogued, logbooks filled out in perfect handwriting, but no sign of the maintenance team. Then we found the table. 2 plates, half-finished meals, cups of tea still sitting there. The food was perfectly preserved, not moldy or spoiled, just waiting, like someone had stepped away for a moment and would be right back. How long has it been since contact was lost? I asked Chen. 72 hours. But the food looked like it had been abandoned 30 minutes ago. We climbed to the lamp room to check the beacon. Everything was functioning normally. LED array throwing light across the water in perfect rhythm. The maintenance log showed the last entry 3 days ago. All systems optimal, weather holding. Team 7 completing final inspections. J. McLeod. I knew McLeod from other jobs. 20-year Coast Guard veteran, meticulous, reliable. Not the type to vanish without explanation. That's when Chen found the unofficial logbook. Hidden behind a loose panel in the lamp room was a small notebook, water-stained and written in multiple hands. The entries went back decades in different handwriting. 1987. The time runs different here. Checked my watch against the radio. Losing 3 hours a day. But the maintenance schedule says we've only been here 6 hours. 1993. Morrison and I compared notes. We've been here 2 days by our count, but the radio says we missed our check-in a week ago. Something's wrong with the island. 2003. Found this book left by previous teams. The lighthouse isn't just on the island. It's part of something bigger. There's a field around this place. Time moves slower here. 2018. Team 6 reporting. We've been here what feels like an hour. Radio contact says we've been missing for 4 days. The anomaly is getting stronger." The final entry was in McLeod's handwriting, dated 3 days ago. "Team 7 final report. We understand now. The 1900 keepers didn't disappear. They walked outside to check something and just never came back from our perspective. But from their perspective, they've been gone 5 minutes. The field is expanding. Time differential now roughly 20 to 1. What feels like 1 hour to us is 20 hours outside. We're not missing. We're just moving through time differently. We could leave, but we'd return to a world where everyone we know is dead. Or we could stay and finish the job we came here to do. We chose to stay. If anyone finds this, know that we're not dead. We're just living in a different time stream. The lighthouse has been containing this temporal anomaly for 120 years. The beacon isn't just a navigation aid. It's a stabilizer. If it ever stops working, the anomaly will expand. We're going to make sure it never stops." Chen was reading over my shoulder. "This is insane," she said. "Time doesn't work that way." But as she spoke, I was watching my chronometer. The second hand seemed to be moving slower than it should. And the radio chatter from our helicopter pilot was starting to sound stretched, distorted. We'd been on the island for what felt like 30 minutes. I radioed the pilot to check our status. "Been trying to reach you for 6 hours, came the reply. "Weather's moving in fast. We need to extract now or wait for the storm to pass." 6 hours? We'd been here 30 minutes. I looked at Chen and saw the understanding in her eyes. We were in it now, caught in the same temporal distortion that had trapped the maintenance team. Every minute we stayed would cost us hours in the outside world. "We leave now," she said. But as we headed for the door, I stopped. Through the lamp room window, I could see figures on the rocks below. 2 men in maintenance coveralls, checking equipment, moving with the casual efficiency of people working a routine job. They looked up and waved at us. It was McLeod and his partner, still working, still maintaining the lighthouse that kept the anomaly contained. From their perspective, they'd been there for maybe an hour. From ours, they'd been missing for 3 days. They looked healthy, content even, like men who'd found their purpose. Chen grabbed my arm. "We're leaving now." As we ran to the helicopter, I heard McLeod's voice carried on the wind. "Tell them we're okay. Tell them the light stays on." The helicopter lifted off just as the storm hit. During the flight back, Chen and I compared notes. We'd been on the island for 45 minutes by our count. The official record shows we were there for 11 hours. The Scottish Maritime Authority classified the maintenance team as lost at sea. Officially, there's no explanation for their disappearance. The lighthouse was re-automated with more advanced systems and is now monitored remotely. But sometimes, on clear nights, fishing boats report seeing figures moving around the lighthouse. Maintenance workers doing their job, keeping the beacon burning bright. They wave at passing ships and seem content with their work. The lighthouse at Flannan Isles has never gone dark, not once in 100 years. And according to my calculations, it never will. MacLeod and his team are still there, still working, trapped in a bubble of slow time, where their shift will last forever. From their perspective, they'll finish their maintenance check and head home tomorrow. They'll have dinner with their families and sleep in their own beds. They just don't know that tomorrow is 20